What's up, y'all? This is Jeremiah.
What's up? This is Steve-O from Jackass. You're listening to Radio DePaul.
Radio DePaul.
Radio DePaul is Chicago's college connection.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our Tuesday hour. It is Lore Love Tales with your girl, Trin. Last week, we were talking about superhero ethics, and I did a little clip with my Tuesday hour about my pick. And if you remember, if you were listening, I was talking about Bubbles, Frozone, Aang and Appa, Garnet, Invincible. Who else? I think those were it. And then the big kahuna was Vice Admiral Garp from One Piece. And some people thought it was a solid list. Others thought it wasn't a good list. Not others, maybe like a few. And some of these were like people that I knew and they were just trying to be haters. But I digress. This week, though, we are talking about my clipboard hit something. But this week, we're going to be talking about art and what makes us who we are. So, this week, in this week's poll on Instagram, if you want to follow those polls, trend_MONAE. This week, I talked about what kind of person, which one sounds like you. And I gave them 3 options. I said, after rewatch, if you've seen that TikTok when they're like, ha ha, again, that one. The next one was I watch TV shows a normal amount, and I'll watch a TV show, then revisit it once a year. So the results, 44% of people said they'd rewatch it again. And then the next one, I watch TV shows a normal amount, that's 33%. And then I'll watch a TV show, then revisit it once a year, which is 22%. So, that's kind of cool though. It's 44, 33, 22. Honestly, I feel like revisiting a show once a year is decent. The one that I'm not the biggest about is like watching TV shows a normal amount. I'm the person who's like willing to rewatch shows over and over and over again because you're always going to watch something or see something different than you did in the watch before. So, what I will get to though is shows that I rewatch, and I'm going to center the biggest show that I tend to rewatch. And we're going to talk about quotes from the show that resonate with me greatly. And that's like the biggest part of this whole episode. And some sharing that I've talked about, as well as the rest of the Tuesday hour that has to do with this topic. So to go back to what I was talking about though, revisiting a show once a year seems fine after a year. But if you're someone who doesn't watch a show constantly, I mean, I get it. You might want a new perspective, but I feel like you're doing yourself a bit of a disservice, because watching something once, you're only just gonna see it. It's like you'll hardly be able to recall anything from what you just watched unless you watch it again. Because not even just movies, right? When we read books, you've been in school for a while and you're doing some close reading, you're constantly rereading and refocusing and annotating. When you're doing math, you're checking your work, you're looking at the same thing multiple times in different angles. And I think that's important, because when it comes to art, I've had a conversation with one of my friends about art and it being subjective and art having its own meaning to different people. And we don't see eye to eye in this. It's not like a bad thing. My friend sees art as, if this is the artist's perspective and they wanted it to be this way, then it should be that way. I personally believe, which I think a lot of others believe, that art is what you want it to be. If there's a specific image that you see and it hasn't, and that was nowhere near what the author or the artist expected, I think that's the beauty of it. The expression is subjective from everybody else. One of the shows that I rewatch is Over the Garden Wall. I haven't watched it because we're just getting into summer. So maybe around like mid-August, a little after my birthday, is when I watch Over the Garden Wall again, because Over the Garden Wall takes place in the fall. But sometimes, I don't know, I'll just watch it during the summer. I think I did watch it again in the summer. I actually, you know what? Me and my great friend Ava, we have tea parties together. And the first one we did was back in like 2021. Wow, 4 years ago. Our first one was an Over the Garden of Ghibli. Over the, like, what was the term? Like, what was the theme? It was a mixture of Over the Garden Wall and Studio Ghibli. So I think it might have been like Over the Garden of Ghibli Party or something like that. We tried to match them together. And that was in the summer. So honestly, we just, any idea of any example of talking about Over the Garden Wall year round, I'm fair game. I'm open to have that conversation. Gilmore Girls is a show that I watch constantly. I was actually watching Gilmore Girls this morning. I just restart. If you've known the show, if you've watched the show, I watch Gilmore Girls. I've seen it the first time all the way through. And then the couple extra rewatches I'll watch all the way through. But once I've gotten a better understanding of the show, there are parts where I'm like, I'm not watching this. I'm going to start right back over to where a safe part is for me. And we'll talk about that too. In Gilmore Girls, I will stop exactly where we figure out that Luke has a daughter. And what is her name? April. When we find out, you think I've watched this so many times. That's like how much I really care about that, I'll say arc, that part of the show, because April and Anna, their whole dynamic, I just wasn't a big fan of. I liked that Luke and April had like a relationship. That's not what I'm disappointed about. It's the fact that he went about the whole thing. I didn't like it. I really feel like I might be getting their names mixed up though. There's April and Anna. Anna, I think, is the mom, and April is the daughter. I hope. If it's not, just flip them. Anyway, once that hits, once we figure out like Luke has a daughter and he chooses not to tell his fiance Lorelai, then it just all goes left. So I just start right back and go back to season 1, like episode 6 or something. I don't know. So the reason why I made that poll though is I wanted to talk about why we have why do we harbor the shows that we watch so much? Why do we constantly rewatch the same shows? And then we influence other people to watch the show, and if they don't like the show as much, I mean, there's no hard feelings, but it would be nice to have somebody to rewatch the show with. You know what I mean? The other show is what I'm going to be talking about. And, you know, however you see this show is really up to you. But hopefully by the end of this Tuesday hour, you'll have a different idea of how the show is viewed and how it's created and put together. Because I think this show was beautifully made in all its weird quirks and dialogue. So, I've realized there was a lot of shows that I used to watch constantly. New Girl used to be one. When I was in Ohio, I used to watch New Girl constantly. And my roommate, because we shared a room together our sophomore year, we also had our own TVs. So I would be watching New Girl, and sometimes when it seemed like it was getting to the end of the show, she told me about this. She was like, man, the fact that you watch New Girl all the time, and every time we get to the end, all you do is start it over. We both start laughing. And honestly, I don't know why. I think it just like somehow left my brain. I still love New Girl. I just realized I haven't. Maybe it's because it went off of Netflix. That's what it was. That's exactly what it was. Because I watched New Girl on Netflix, and then New Girl went to like Peacock and Hulu. And I was like, this is so inconvenient. Everything else, you know. But the reason why the small, like, inconspicuous meaning or whatever of why people watch the same show over and over again is familiarity, right? We don't want to find anything different because we know the shows, we know the stories. These are like our friends. We know exactly what's going to happen. It's unpredictable. And at the end of the day, it's why people call it a comfort show. But from what I realize, watching the same show over and over again not only can be, I mean, you can find something different all the time. Every time I watch Gilmore Girls, I'm like, I don't feel like I watched this episode. It's always like that. Or any other show that I rewatch, I'm always like, was I asleep during this time? I've watched this show how many times? And I feel like I've never seen this part, because some things stick out to you the most. And I think that's one of the pros about rewatching shows, but I think it just depends on your your consumption. Because of that bias, it will constantly make us a little bit resistant to change. In not a huge way. I think, honestly, because I watch so many shows, just like in the first Tuesday hour I was talking about, I was, my friend of mine, she was telling me about Severance. And at the time, I was like, I don't really want to watch Severance, even though it's a good show. Like, now that I've seen it, it's a great show. But in the beginning, I was like, I'm watching Gilmore Girls already. Like, I haven't seen it before. And, like, YouTube. I've been watching a lot of YouTube lately. Honestly, all the YouTubers that I watch have been doing their thing lately. They've been very, very consistent. And I love that. And when they're not consistent, it's like, okay, that's fine. You're just people that have lives. And sometimes, because there's this one YouTuber that I watch, Morgan Evelyn Cook. She's Chicago based. She lives in Chicago. And there was this little post that she made. She was like, yeah, life has been being a little bit, hectic and stuff like that. So there won't be an episode video this week. And I was like, when I read that, I was like, she really didn't have to tell us. But I think for that reason, she found a community that she really found like she really loves. And she needed to let the community know that she just wasn't going to be present. And that's really hard. Like, when I think about that, when people have a huge following and they feel like they have to explain themselves, when in hindsight they really don't have to, because if they support you, they're gonna support the fact that you just need some time away. But I digress. Before I get into tangent, the last show that I tend to rewatch a lot is Bojack Horseman. Now look, Bojack Horseman can get pretty dark, but honestly, I think the show has the most beautiful messages in it. And I'm gonna give you a little bit of backstory. So I watched Bojack Horseman for the first time 5 years ago. We had just moved into our house, and it was COVID times. So I was in my new vacant room with a bed, because like when you move in somewhere, you realize after a certain amount of time, you're like, man, or unless you look back on old pictures of where you were when you first moved in the house, it seems so empty. And now I look at my room now. I left my room completely messed up because I had no idea what to wear today. But still, it looks lived in. At that time, I can see myself watching Bojack Horseman 5 years ago and realizing there wasn't much character in this room. So all I had was just watching Bojack for the first time, and I got recommended. I got recommended to watch it, or I just kept hearing my friend Jimmy talk about it. One of my longest, closest friends I've had, and he would like quote things from Bojack Horseman. I'm like, all right, I'll watch it. So with that, right, I started it because, it's a Netflix original, and the show was like, okay, interesting. There's this has-been actor who's a horse, and his name is also Horseman, which is like dead on. And he seems like he's really adamant about living in the old days, I guess. But like when I started watching the show a little longer, we're in season 1, we're in season 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I ended that show and I was like, wow, those are one of the shows that I wish I could feel and watch again for the first time. And maybe that's a little bit of me doing that now. But honestly, within the 5 years that I've known about this show, it's funny because I started watching the show when the show ended. And I think it was also because there was a promotion for it. Like, oh, season 6 is out now or something. I was like, I keep hearing about Bojack Horseman. I keep seeing about Bojack Horseman. So maybe I should try watching Bojack Horseman. And I was like, wow, you know what? I know exactly what people are talking about. And at that point in my life, as most like late teens, I was 17 at the time. So I was just like, wow, they're really saying these things. so fluently. Like, they're saying what my internal monologue has always said to their peers. And the people around them either understand that or trying to help them or disagree. And the relationships built in Bojack Horseman they can be very dysfunctional, but at the end of the day, it's been the biggest example of trying your hardest even when you know you're not the best either. And when I watched Bojack, because I rewatched I watched Free Churro again last night. And if you have me on TikTok, I have numerous TikToks of me reciting Free Churro. And the thing is, I can recite the first part because essentially the episode of Free Churro is just a whole monologue. Well, the first part is a flashback. The first part is where Bojack is much younger and he's getting picked up by his dad from soccer practice. And the monologue starts with his dad talking about his mom and how she went to go see a doll's house, which a little bit of that I'll talk about later. And just, he's had the worst examples of parenthood, I will say, for Bojack. And that's something that I really feel for him, because I was like, man, for as long as he can remember, he can never recall a time where his parents are like this. I was like, I feel so upset. Like, I feel so bad. I feel so bad for this written horse, like this drawn horse, that ultimately he didn't really, like, he never really had a full relationship with them. And we tried to see if there was any good in these parents as much as he did. And I think that's some really great storytelling, some really great writing. Sorry. I have no idea what's going on with my ears. Maybe it's allergies. But if you've had that point where your ears get itchy, I don't know what it is. I woke up this morning with it. Maybe it's a bug. But maybe my nose is also like very dry. But we're trying. We're making it work. So, anyway, when I tell you about Beatrice Horseman, because that's what the episode is about, her death, Bojack is talking for 20 minutes. And when I watched the episode for the first time, I was like, oh, this is just a monologue. I have no problem with this. I don't think I've ever seen any media like this before, unless it was literally like someone performing a monologue and it was meant to be. But in the grand scheme of things, this is really just a man talking about his own understanding of how he never really knew his mother, and talking for 20 minutes to an audience that has no idea who he is. And I thought that was interesting. The amount of shows or like videos that I've watched about people's analyses about Free Churro. And I was like, this is really interesting. And Beatrice Horseman, from what I told you, her husband, Butterscotch Horseman, Beatrice Butterscotch Bojack. And I think it's cute. I think that's a cute concept. I just wish they were a cuter family. Like, I wish they were cute to each other. But we only really got the backstory of both Bojack and Beatrice. I really wish we got some Butterscotch lore, but something that Bojack said in Free Churro about his father's attempt at making this great American novel that ultimately led him to his own demise of dying during a duel. Literally, he died in a duel. She talks about we actually get revealed Beatrice's backstory about who she was when she was younger, her family, when Bojack goes to Michigan in their summer house. And it's not justified of who Beatrice Horseman is as a mother, but I can understand why she's so frozen and cold. Her father never listened to her. Her mother was at one point the only light that she had until she got lobotomized for a terrible, stupid reason. She was grieving her child, Beatrice's older brother, Crackerjack, when he died in the war. He died during World War II. and she was devastated. She lost her only son. And when she couldn't get a hold of her own grief, then around this time, this is when when a woman was upset about something, she was just hysterical, when she was literally just either she had postpartum depression, or she was just upset, or she was just depressed. Guys, how about we try and talk to these women? So I was really upset about that I'm so glad that didn't really go any further in like modern medicine to what I know. But all of that happened to her at such a young age. And of course, talking about that, from what I can see from what we were seeing in the show, she couldn't really talk about it as much. So there's a lot of Reddits that I read, because honestly, I only have a couple of people that I can talk about Bojack Horseman with. Really, it is just the one. But if I find people and they like Bojack Horseman, I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. If I were to sit and say, hey, what do you think about Good Damage? What do you think about Diane saying all of the things that ever happened to her should mean for something, and at the end of the day, she should come out victorious because bad things have happened to her? What do you think about that? I feel like if we were to get into something like that, maybe it just wouldn't be talked about, because I feel like it's not the deepest topic. But I'm just saying, I like going under the iceberg. Everything. What are we not really seeing? And what do we have to rewatch over and over again to see, oh, this is what they're talking about. This, I've never seen this before, but it was right there the entire time. So, there is this play that, again, Butterscotch was talking about, and how it's a real play, A Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen. It's by Ibsen. I forgot how to pronounce his first name, but Beatrice really resonates with the play that she watched, because apparently she was crying. And the play, which I actually watched because I couldn't find, I want to see the actual show. Oh my gosh, I want to watch the play fully, and they had it on YouTube. And it's about a wife who tries to liberate herself with financial freedom, and she feels stuck in her own ways. Not in her own ways, but she feels stuck. She feels caged in by her responsibilities as a mother, as a wife, and she doesn't really feel seen by her husband. So people can argue, there's a lot of people out there who are like, oh my gosh, Ibsen's such a feminist and stuff like that. I don't know too much about that. I can't make a full-on assumption. I can't make that big of an assessment, but I think I started watching the 5th season of You. I don't know if I can watch this show anymore. I can't even lie to you. I watched the first episode of the last season, and I just can't do the unreliable narrator anymore. I can only do it for so long. I recommend Fury by Alex Michaelides a lot to people who love You. Like, the book is great. When I started reading this book, I was like, this is exactly the same premise with Joe Goldberg. But I was just like, 5 seasons of unreliability and we're already in the first episode. I don't know. I can't do this. Maybe if we can switch it up. Seems like he just wants to say the same way. I think he just likes killing people. And I think maybe that's just, I don't know. I don't think it's not the best thing. But it was known, it was said, and it was confirmed in the first episode by Kate. She's like, oh, you like killing? Or how does it make you feel? And he's like, exhilarating. Oh, whoa. Anyway, all I have to say is, though, rewatching shows, I don't know. It can be a little bit excessive, but if I have something that I want to share from a different perspective, I'm just going to share it. So there's some quotes. How many do we have, actually? We're going to get through all of them for sure. I just want to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, it's like around 5 or 6. I think so. But yeah. Yes, Bojack Horseman and the quotes and why they're so amazing, and more coming later. I'm going to put you guys on a break and I will see you guys back here in a sec. All right, guys, we're back. And we're going to get into these quotes. So, I want to start off with talking about Todd. Not too much, but one of his quotes, we're going to start off with what he says. And he says, "You are all the things that are wrong with you." I know we started off strong. we started off super strong. But look, there's a reason why I did this, and I'll tell you much later, near the end. But this is a part of the show where Bojack has been unreliable. He has been making terrible choices. He had an infidelity with Todd's best friend that he liked and was in a relationship kind of with. And Bojack starts to make these ideas and excuses. And he was like, no, you can't just say these things and be okay with it. You are all the things that are wrong with you. I think, in my honest opinion, that I 100% disagree, because I have said this a lot. I believe that you are not doomed to the things you do and the decisions you make. There's another thing that I feel like what I'm about to say could be argued, and people may disagree, and that's okay. But I don't think, honestly, I feel like we are not the decisions we make. And you may think like, what? I disagree, because we're exactly what we do. We are the decisions we make. But hear me out, right? I feel like when we make decisions, we ultimately try and make the best decisions, right? We were told when we were younger, try to make good decisions so you can have good grades and have great friends and all that stuff. But honestly, if we were the decisions we made, everybody would be flawless. I think everybody, if we knew exactly what we were supposed to do, if we made all the 100% great decisions, then maybe there'd be people out there who weren't in debt, who are in school and have great friends and relationships and know how to communicate. I think, honestly, instead of saying we are the decisions we make, no, I don't think that at all. I feel like we're the outcomes that we've endured. And it takes a certain amount of courage to say this outcome really did something for me. Either it left me broken and left me hurt, or this was the most greatest feeling I've ever done. How do I feel like this all the time? Or how do I make this feeling feel for other people? How do I make people feel the way that I'm feeling? So to say that we are the decisions we make, I feel like that's kind of flawed. Because ultimately, when you make a decision, you're subconsciously feeling like this could be a good decision for me. But there are sometimes 50-50. The decision is terrible. You think something is really good for you in hindsight. It's the worst decision you've probably ever made. But the outcome of that is up to you. You could either make yourself upset about it and probably be like, hey, this is like, this broke me, and I think I'll just continue to be broken here. Or, this broke me. What can I do to pick up the pieces? So I think maybe we should challenge that. Maybe we should challenge that idea of not saying that we are the decisions we make. Because I honestly, in my 100%, my full honest opinion, I think that's false. I also don't think I also feel like we're not doomed to the things we do. I think, of course, it takes accountability to understand that you could be hurting people and hurting things, but it's just not, I don't know. I don't think it's effective. So that's the first quote. The second quote I will say, was said by this character called Mr. Cuddly Whiskers. And to give you context, Diane and Bojack, they found that Mr. Cuddly Whiskers was missing, and they were trying to find him. And when they finally found him, he was in this just serene, he was at home, he was just at peace. He was just secluded from the rest of the world. And Diane was just like, how could you just run away? You can't just go away and disappear. You really hurt a lot of people. And Mr. Cuddly Whiskers was like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm happy. But that's not the quote. He talks about how a long time he's done show business. He's done all these wonderful things. But at the end of the day, when all is said and done in a closed door, sometimes you do just get lonely. And he says, it takes a long time to see how truly miserable you are, and even longer to realize that it doesn't have to be that way. And that ties into the first quote that I mentioned too, because you can be upset at yourself for a long time, but how much longer are you going to make that hurt you? And then ultimately, that hurt transfers to other people. And sometimes you may actually know what you're doing, but other times you're subconsciously hurting other people by how much you've hurt. And that's not the healthiest way to go. I will say, though, from the first quote, when it says you're all the things wrong with you, and why I talk about decisions we make, to give you guys like an example, like an anecdote. When I moved here, when I moved back home, back in like September of 2023, I wasn't sure of the decision I made of coming back home, because I came home abruptly and I was like, I want to go home. My mom, I know both of my parents felt this way, but my mom, she expressed this greatly when I was like fully settled back home. She really wanted me back home. And she told me how much she prayed about me coming back home and she just wished I could come back home. And at that time, when I felt like I felt like my anxiety was just about to wash over me, it was just like, go home. And I called my mom. And I can think about that. I want to think about that point of where my mom was at the time. I think she might have been at home because my parents were heading somewhere. But I feel like I caught them right before they were leaving the house or something. I don't know. And just like imagining the fact that her daughter was on the phone, on the brink of tears. And especially as soon as she asked me, was I okay? I started bawling. Because I called and I said, hey, Mom, about coming home. Can I come home a little earlier? And she's like, yeah, of course. When did you want to come back home? And I said, today. Now. And she could tell, because I think that's just a mom thing. She could tell that there was something wrong. And she was like, what's wrong? And then I just started crying. I think ultimately that's just what really does it with anybody. Even if it is not my mom, it's just like if there's something wrong and I'm trying to hold it together and they're like, are you okay? Dang. You said the words. I didn't know if that was a good decision, but a little part of me was like, maybe you should go home. And you don't know if that's the best decision. Maybe something will come great out of it. And it did. 2 years later, I'm here talking to you. And at the end of the day, if I didn't make that decision, right, who's to say that I could have not made something beautiful out of staying and trying and being courageous and saying, you know, I'm really hurt here. What if I try and pick myself back up here? Sometimes I think about that. I think about that often, but not as often as I used to. I feel like maybe there could have been some really big accomplishments made. Maybe there could have. But I'm here now. So I just wanted to share that. So any decision that you make, you're just solely the outcome of what you've endured. And that's the best way. The third quote has a bit of a theory to it. Because when I find people who love Bojack Horseman, even if they're not like physical people, if I find it on Reddit, if I find a YouTube video, if I find an article, whatever, I'm like, this is so fascinating. I'm intrigued. I'm invested. So as I was putting these quotes together, I knew this was one of them because I talked about this in a free churro video that I talked on my YouTube. If you want to see that, my YouTube is Tren Universe, all one word, TREN Universe. And it's I think it's titled Let's talk about free churros or something like that. I think it is. It's actually a few months after I moved. Yeah. After I moved back home. I think it's like November or something. But I digress. I knew I wanted this quote. And the thing is, though, I was wondering, I was like, I've seen the Japanese, I forgot, like, it's a Japanese primate. I think it's a macaque. I don't know. I'm trying to pronounce it, but I don't want to mess it up. So I'm just going to say a Japanese primate. And honestly, I had noticed his presence in the show because here it is. When I looked at, because I wanted to look it up some more because I know somebody who loves Bojack Horseman would have went into it, and sure enough, somebody did. So he doesn't really have a name, but he's not a baboon either. They made that very known. The people who looked this up was like, he is not a baboon. He's a Japanese primate. I'm just gonna say the primate again. So, he's a jogger, right? But for context, Bojack had always wanted to play the role of Secretariat, and because Secretariat was a real person in that time, and Secretariat is a real horse. But funny enough, Secretariat is fun fact. I'll put the fun fact in now because I forgot to do it last week. Sorry, but Secretariat is, I think he's voiced by John Krasinski, who plays Jim in The Office. Sorry, I don't know why I blanked out about that. The Office is actually a show that I've always rewatched a lot. That was during high school, and John Krasinski, he's actually has like a balanced voice acting career. He plays one of Jito's friends in The Wind Rises in Studio Ghibli, the English dub version, obviously, and then he plays one of the monsters in Monsters University, the monster that inspires Mike Wazowski to go to Monsters University, if you didn't know. I really like listening to voices and stuff. And I can find, like, when I'm watching something, and I'm like, this sounds like such and such. And 100% of the time, I'm usually right. That's my flex. It's kind of useless, but like, it's a little game that I like to play. Anyway, the Japanese primate jogger, he shows up a lot in season 2 because Bojack finally got the role of being Secretariat, and his manager his director was told she told him to lose 20 pounds and gain back 30. I don't really know what that, like, why didn't she just say to lose 20 pounds? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it didn't really make sense to me. I don't know. Maybe that's just like, because Bojack Horseman, the show, is very satirical too to, Hollywood today. Everyone talks about their diet and everyone talks about the industry. And I think it's been making a mockery of like that, of that in the show. You can see a lot of examples of that. And I think it's also for just a legal, legality, but Hollywood in Bojack Horseman is not Hollywood, it's Hollywood. There's MSNBC instead of NBC. When they have reporters like the View and all that stuff and Extra, they have like, this is a Ryan Seacrest type, and it's so funny. Anyway, when Bojack starts running, he ultimately he's like in his 50s at this point, and he hasn't had the best diet, so he starts running and he gets really burnt out, and we see that good chunk of all of season 2. But the last episode of season 2, Bojack Horseman just like collapses. He's trying to catch his breath, and he's laying out on his back. And the Japanese primate comes and is like, it gets easier. Bojack's like, what? He's like, it gets easier. Every day it gets a little easier. You just got to do it every day. That's the hard part. And I was like, you know what? True. You're absolutely right. And this can be applicable anywhere. And I was just like, ain't that something? I was in therapy for a while, for like 9 months when I was in college in Kent. And sometimes I have a hard time with simplicity. And one of the things that my therapist had told me was like, things can be simple. And I don't know, like anybody else could have said that to me. But I feel like that just resonates. One of those things where someone's talking to you and something just kind of jumps out at you. And it's just replaying in your head. The person's still talking, but it's just replaying in your head. You have no idea what this person is saying, but it's just like, wow, wait a minute. Things can be simple. She's probably giving me homework the whole time, and I'm like, things can be simple. And I was just like, I thought about getting that tatted. Sometimes I still do, because it's just a reminder. Things just can be simple. It's not that hard. Yeah, but more into the theory. I'm just going to say the Japanese baboon. I'm sorry. I know I want to be a zoologist, but at this point for terminology, I can't. The baboon. We see in season 3, he has his own appearance, but it's not in the present. It's actually a flashback. Because every time we see the Japanese baboon, he's going up, he's like running up the stairs in front of Bojack's lawn, like in front of his house. So the thing about Bojack Horseman is there's a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of, okay, we're going forward, we're going backward, we're but at the time they make it very known. They don't just say, oh, this was in 2007. Bojack in the show, they'll say something like, hey, what are we doing over here with those Uggs back in the year, which is 2007? Like, they will make it very known of what year it is. Or if it's in 1999, they're like, oh, I'm singing a 1990 song because it's 1993. I don't know. They could have put like a title sequence and say like a couple years ago. But I think that's what made it the show unique as well. What are we doing here now in the year of 2008? Oh, hey, it's 2006. Stuff like that. But in the appearance that we get, this is in 2007, like I said. And the Japanese baboon is still there, running. But this time he has a partner, which looks like an older lady around his age. And I thought about that. And somebody else thought about that. And I was like, wait a minute. Could that have been his wife? And could that, what he'd been saying to Bojack, been something that he was trying to ultimately tell himself as well? Because in 2007, we see that lady once. And then back in the present, we've only just seen the Japanese baboon just go up the same trail each time it pans to Bojack's house. So when the baboon sees Bojack giving up, maybe he saw that in himself too and was like, you got to do it every day. It gets easier, but you got to do it every day. That's the hard part. Maybe it's the fact that he was doing it with his wife and his wife is no longer here. And he may have promised her that. And I don't know. I thought that was really sad, but also beautiful at the same time. Yeah. Someone else had said, because it's funny, in the Free Tro episode, Bojack talks about how there was a one part in when he was filming a show in back in the 90s he did. He talks about how a fan had asked him, oh, when you were shooting this episode, there was one scene where in one shot, there was a coffee cup in the back, but in the other shot, the coffee cup's missing. Is this to explain the fluctuant subjectivity of memory? And Bojack was like, in the back of his mind, he was like, no, because some of the crew people just forgot their coffee cup in the shot. But he couldn't let that fan down and just, rain on his parade, because he really saw something in that coffee cup, or lack thereof of any in other shots. So he just lied and said, yeah. And he talks about how often sometimes we put little significances on things when they didn't really have a meaning in the first place. And he says we're dumb, but I don't think we are. I disagree, because art essentially is just, again, what I said in the beginning, is what you make it. And if you find something in art, I think that's what ultimately brings people closer to it, because at the end of the day, we insert ourselves in art to feel closer to it. And if that's what you need, that's what you need. The creator of Over the Garden Wall, who has also worked on Adventure Time, I think has also created Adventure Time. I'm not too sure. Don't quote me. A lot of people have their ideas and their theories about it, because it's such a layered show. And Patrick McHale has made it known. He said, whatever theory you guys have, that's what it is. I agree. Whatever you have, whatever theory, I'm fine with it. It's perfectly fine. If that's how you see it, that's how you see it. And I think that's a great thing to share with people, because if you had a set idea of what you wanted to make, but somebody else still appreciate the way that you made it, but they also saw something in themselves, I think that's the beautiful part of art of all. It might make me sound a little hippie, but it's fine. It's super good. We've got a couple more. We're gonna speed this up though, because there's a lot. There's like 3 more. So, which kind of has the same premise around which the next one I'm gonna say. This is said by Bojack Horseman. In the great grand scheme of things, we're just tiny specks that will one day be forgotten. So it doesn't matter what we did in the past or how we'll be remembered. The only thing that matters is right now, this moment, this one spectacular moment we are sharing together. I forgot in which context he was saying this, but since it says tiny specks, this might be the episode. Look at me diving back into my brain. Tiny specks. I think this might have been the episode where Sarah Lynn dies, I think. And he's saying we, so I think it might be something that, the final thing that he said, or maybe the last thing Sarah Lynn heard before she died. I don't think we're just tiny specks that will one day be forgotten. But I'll get into that later near the end, because that goes into what the book that I just finished earlier this week that I love oh so much, and I think it's actually my favorite. When people tell me or ask me, what's my favorite book? This is the book that I'm going to tell you. So we're going to move on so I can get all these quotes out. These last two are actually in the last episode of Bojack Horseman. So I do this. There's a reason why I do these things. I put work into these notes, okay? So this is the last dialogue between Diane and Bojack. And it starts off, but I'm not going to tell you the whole thing. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But there's a point where Diane comes back because she's lived her life in LA, but she moved to Houston to be with her husband, Guy, which I love. I love Guy. I love him. He's the best for her. And actually, he's just green flags all around. I honestly, but I digress. Diane says, sometimes I look at my LA years and I think, who was that person? And Bojack goes, does she ever come back? That Diane. And this is the quote that I'm highlighting the most part. Diane goes, sometimes. I felt her when I got back to LA. I feel her now that I'm talking to you. I mean, it's all me. I'd love to say no, she's gone forever. I'm glad I lived in LA, but I'm not nostalgic for it. I'm glad I knew Mr. Peanut Butter, even though he's not in my life anymore. I think there are people that help you become the person that you end up being, and you can be grateful for them, even if they were never meant to be in your life forever. 100%. There are some parts of my life that I've seen and I've grown from, and whether I'm nostalgic about it or not, it's still something that I endured. And at the time, small parts of myself in that life, in that season of my life, found some solace, found some happiness in such dark moments. And at the end of the day, she was still deserving of those things. Maybe they weren't the best examples of who I was at the time. Maybe she was a little more anxious than she needed to be. But she still deserved to be happy. She still deserved to find discipline and strength and resilience and all those things. And those very things are what make us who we are, even if they weren't meant to be in their life forever. And I think about that a lot. It's maybe that's just the reason why sometimes I have like a hold on memories and parts of my life, and I like to reflect on them because, again, they're all me. I can't just dismiss them because there are parts of me in my life. I've lived through it, and I can live to tell the tale. So there's one more, and this is the last dialogue between Todd and Bojack. There's a reason, like I said in the beginning, the first quote was like kind of heavy. So we get to this point where Bojack and Todd are looking at the fireworks between Judah and Princess Carolyn's wedding. And they go away and get some air because Todd can tell that Bojack got a little overwhelmed and needed some air. And Bojack at this point is incarcerated, but he found a way to not be in jail anymore, or like to to get out of it for a day so he can come to the wedding. Because I mean, I guess his status or whatever. But I digress. He talks about how he likes the routine. He likes the schedule, and he has little goals for himself, and the fact that he'll be reaching his sobriety and stuff like that. And he's talking to Todd about how, what if, like after that, then what? And then Todd's like, you'll break another record. Every day you'll set a new record. And it's very different from what I was telling you about in the first quote, right? Because he was telling Bojack, you're all the things that are wrong with you. You can't just keep doing these things and expect people to, you know what I mean? But I think after a while, once he's gained his own, when he's started to forgive himself, I'm talking about Todd in this aspect, when Todd talks about his relationship with his mom and how he's been more forgiving and patient about that, I think he's grown more compassionate with Bojack. And he understands it now, because unfortunately, sometimes sometimes you don't realize you're hurting people, or the things that you say hurt until it happens to you. Unfortunately, that's a hard and honest truth, but only then you're like, okay, I get it. That kind of stung, but I get it now. So Todd starts talking about the hokey pokey. And he's like, I feel like people are too like adamant and focus too much on the hokey pokey part. When you talk about it, you do the hokey pokey and you turn yourself around. That's what it's all about. And he talks about, like I said, his relationship with his mom and how he didn't realize it would never be something, but now it is. And he's like, but that's the part. It's like you turn yourself around. And Bojack's like, I don't know if the songwriters put that much thought into the existential significance of the lyrics. And then Todd's like, but isn't the point of art less what people put into it and more what people get out of it? Or maybe art doesn't need a point. Maybe that's why it's called art. And that's exactly what I've been getting into for this entire hour that we're talking about. Because this is the hokey pokey. This is a nursery rhyme. From what Bojack literally said, it's like, he was like, they literally rhymed about with about. Nothing too crazy. But from what you get out of it, if that's what you need, that's what you need. And I think it's not a terrible thing to reach. Because it could be a reach. But all that, I think my battery just died from my camera. But it's fine, don't worry about it. I digress though. I feel like, honestly, at the end of the day, no matter what happens when it comes to art, I don't know. It's just, I think it's just a beautiful thing. And if somebody doesn't get how you see it, they don't have to understand it. I mean, you can try and explain it to them so that they could if they really want to. But at the end of the day, they have to respect it. Because that person might not understand why you don't care about this specific piece of art. There's an exhibit in the Art Institute, in the modern art part, where, you've got your Andy Warhols and stuff like that, but there's an exhibit last year. Was it last year? Yeah, I think it was last year. Last year I took my friend Levert to the Art Institute for his birthday. And there was this exhibit where they had literally 3 empty glass bottles of Coke. And and it had a cover on it. And I was like, and this is in the Art Institute? We're both looking at each other like, this is ridiculous. We're about to go buy some Jarritos right now and put them in a Ziploc bag or something and make $2 million from it. Because this is ridiculous. I don't know. Me and him didn't really see what the appeal was from that, but maybe there's somebody who really loved Coke and loved it with their grandparents, and the grandparents both passed away. And he has vivid memories of them drinking Coca-Cola on the porch every summer. And maybe that hit different for them, but it just didn't for me. Lastly, I will say, the last couple of minutes before we go, this book that I just finished. I wish I had the physical copy. I'm going to buy the physical copy, actually, because I know this is going to be a book that I reread constantly, over and over again. It's called Tuesdays with Morrie. And it's nothing new at all. It came out in 1997. So it's just like, this book has been talked about. I've seen it. I've actually seen, there was actually a reference to it in Gilmore Girls. And I've also seen the book a lot. Like, I can recognize the cover and be like, oh, this is Tuesdays with Morrie. I've seen this book constantly. And it's a story about it says like on the front cover, like an old man, a young man, life lessons or whatever. But I didn't really know what it was really about until I started listening to it. And I think it's much better listening to it first and then reading it. It's read by the author, which is, I love when they do that. I love when the author reads their books. It's like, cause that's how they want it to be said. Right. So, it's about a sociology professor named Morrie, who unfortunately is no longer here. He's no longer with us, but, he is a professor that Mitch worked alongside multiple times. He did all of the classes that he taught and all of the classes that he took with Morrie. His biggest days, he had other days that he had class with Morrie, but the biggest days, the longest days were Tuesdays. And much later, when Mitch graduated, 16 years later, he finds that this professor, Ted Koppert, I think, because this is real. This is a real story. This is like almost a memoir, but or like it is a memoir, but like it's a different outline, I guess. So I have to say this. He found out watching TV. I think Ted Copper was like, this is Maury Schwartz and he's dying, and this is why you should know about him. And he stopped. And he found out that Maury has ALS, or Lou Gehrig's disease, which essentially takes over your body after a long period of time. And it's grueling having to hear about it. So 16 years later, he not reconciles. He goes to see his professor again. He wants to talk to him, and they revamp their Tuesdays. So it's now Tuesdays with Maury, and they talk about love. They talk about marriage. They talk about forgiveness. And friendship and all of these things. And they were such beautiful things. And all of the things that Maury had said, I felt so seen, because every time I talk about stuff like this, I feel like the odd one out. And sometimes I feel like maybe I think too much about humanity. Maybe I think too much about like love and loving people and trying to be compassionate and hearing other people out and trying not to make people feel less alone in this world. But Maury said it so fluently and so vividly, and he was dying. And he acted like he wasn't. So I just thought it was just a beautiful idea of Mitch talking about that and sharing that, because he said this is what needs to be heard. This is what needs to be told. So Tuesdays with Maury, one thing that he said, two things I will say, I'm sorry, before I go. He says when they talk about death, he talks about how death doesn't, what did he say? I want to make sure that I say this right. Death loses a life, or death loses a soul, not a relationship. And I thought that was so telling, because I was like, you're absolutely right. All of the things that people have remembered from the people that are no longer with them, they're still with them, and that memory lives on in people. And the mantra, or anything that he remembered from Maury, is what Maury said: love each other or die.